Well, good morning there, and welcome to morning ASVAB review. So I'm actually pulling some questions from my actual book, which is ASVAB for Math Practice. So let's go through a couple of these. Today should be a short session. So what is the slope of a line perpendicular to y equals negative 2/3 x plus 4? Well, first thing we need to know is our slope, and we need to understand what perpendicular means. Well, with perpendicular, this is when the two lines, when they intersect, they create a 90-degree angle. So the one thing we know about slope, first of all, our equation is in what's called slope-intercept form. Your slope is basically the directive after you plot your y-intercept. So my slope in this case is a negative 2/3. And that's going to be important. So what I know is when slopes are perpendicular, they have what's called the opposite reciprocal. So the opposite recip. So if I had a slope that was 1/3, this is a positive 1/3. The opposite would be negative, but not negative 1/3. It will be negative, and we're doing the reciprocal. We're going to flip. So that means your numerator is now your denominator is now your numerator. So that will give you 3/1. And if you want to reduce that further, you could simply say it's a negative 3. But looking at ours, it's a negative 2/3. So that means the opposite reciprocal of that is going to be positive, and then we're going to flip it, which is 3/2. So the slope that is perpendicular to this equation of the line is going to have a slope. So the slope that is perpendicular to this equation of the line is going to have a slope that's 3/2. And the answer for that is D. Okay. When your slope is parallel, that's when your slopes are the same. So if they said that, hey, find me the slope is parallel, that's when your slopes are the same. So if they said that, hey, find me the slope of the line, this is opposite, that's parallel. Okay, just a small extension. And they said the equation was y equals negative 3/4 x plus 1. And they said we want the slope of the line that's going to be parallel to this. Again, we're looking at our negative 3/4. And the one thing about parallel lines, they never intersect, but they both have the same slope. So negative 3/4 will be parallel. Perpendicular, that's when you're doing the opposite reciprocal. Change the signs, then flip. Okay? All right. So, 22. If f of x is equal to 2 squared plus 3, and the g of x is 2x minus 1, find the composition of f of g of 3. If you're taking the ASVAB and you see a question like this, you're doing pretty good. Okay, so that means you're probably in the mid to late 60s, getting your way up to the 70s. So what happens? This is a combination, okay, of two functions. And we've done functions for anything. So now, when you do something like this, it looks like a handful. But the secret is to work from your inside out. So if your first focus, there we go, should be the g of 3. So we're looking at the g function. Now the g function is 2x minus 1. We're looking for the g of 3. So that'll be our first part. Notice the 3 and the x are in the same spots. So that means we're going to replace the x's with a 3. So now we're just doing everything on this right-hand side. We use this left-hand side to keep track of what we replace the x with. So now we have 2 times 3, that gives me 6. And 6 minus 1, that gives me 5. So the g of 3 is equal to 5. So I'm going to replace the g of 3 inside this parenthesis, and I'm going to replace it with a 5. So that means now we should have the f of 5. So now we're going to be looking at the f function, and the f function is x squared plus 3. Okay? So here we're going to replace the x with the 5's. So 5 squared, that's not 10. That's 5 times 5. So we have an exponent, we have a base. The exponent's job is to tell the base how many times it's going to multiply itself. So 5 times 5, that gives me 25. And 25 plus 3, that gives me 28. So what you did was, you took your answer from the middle function, replaced it to do the substitution for the outer function to get your official answer. So this is the f of g of 3 is equal to 28. Okay. Alright, so this is basically doing the ASVAB from math practice, but GED, you have some of the same things. Same thing with Accuplacer. So this is some of the problems that's part of my ASVAB math practice book. Okay, so we're just taking a page out of the book. Now, for the next one, which equation represents a line passing through 4, the coordinate 4, negative 2, with the slope of 0? Okay. So, as we look at this, they're giving us 2 things. Well, really 3 things. 1, they want an equation. 2, they're giving us a point. And 3, they told us that the slope is going to be 0. Now I know, and I'm going to show you this in 2 ways. When I see equation, the very first thing that I think of is y equals mx plus b. Your m is your slope, your b is your y-intercept. But they're not giving us the y-intercept. They're giving us a point. That means this is your x and this is your y. So I can do my substitution. I have negative 2 for my y. I have 0 for my slope. And I have a positive 4 for my x. So 0 times 4, that gives me 0. So what we have is negative 2 is equal to my b value. Okay, my y-intercept. So now that I have a y-intercept, we already know what the slope is. I can write it as y equals 0x minus 2. But we all know that 0 is a placeholder, but we don't need for it to hold anything. So that's why 0x is basically 0. It's not worth. Okay? So we have y is equal to negative 2. Answer is going to be B. That's one way of looking at it. Another way is the slope of 0. Now, if we know that we have a 0 slope, that means if I were to sketch the graph, okay, here's my axes, and then 4, negative 2 is going to be in the 4th quadrant, somewhere around here. And if I have a 0 slope, that means my slope or my line is going to be horizontal every time. 0 slopes are horizontal. Undefined slopes are vertical. But since we're looking at a slope of 0, that means I'm going to have a horizontal line. And horizontal lines only cross through the y-axis. So right away, option A and option D are gone. And since I know that this point is going to be in the 4th quadrant, because all the points in this quadrant, the x values are positive and the y values are negative. So that's when I know it only goes through, like the line only goes through the y-axis, and it has to be negative. That's another way of looking at it. Okay? All right. Okay. Yeah. Because since slope is 0, no matter what you plug in, you're going to get a 0 for this value. All right. So again, all of these sample questions get a 0 for this value. All right. So again, all of these sample questions, if you're like, wow, this is something that I really need to practice on, you just go to the link that's in my profile. Okay, the final 2 questions. Find the distance between coordinates negative 3, 5 and coordinates 5, negative 1. This is where a lot of people go wrong. A lot of people will say, oh, I see 2 points, I'm going to do the slope. So that's y sub 2 minus y sub 1. No. They're not asking for the slope or the rate of change. They're asking for the distance. Distance is slightly different. It's basically the points for your Pythagorean theorem. Because it's basically the points for your Pythagorean theorem. Because we want to know how far is this point from this point. Now some people will just go ahead and plot the points, but I'm going to give you the distance formula. So the distance formula, we're dealing with the square root, and we're taking the difference of our x values, squaring it, plus the difference of our y values, and squaring that. Okay. So the way that we plug in, since we read from left to right, this is my x1, this is my y1. This is my x2, this is my y2. So, keeping that square root, we're going to plug in. So my x sub 2 is 5. So we got 5 minus a negative 3. This is where a lot of people tend to skip. You just put 5 minus 3. No, you're minusing a negative 3. That negative 3 just replaces the x sub 1. Then we square it. Then we have negative 1 minus 5. Then you square that. Okay, so whatever you replace, and if it's a negative, put a parenthesis around it. It doesn't replace this minus sign. Okay. So, when we have five minus a negative 3. When you minus a negative, it turns positive. So you can think of it as we have to understand that rule, or you can think of the rule of multiplication when it comes to integers. A negative times a negative gives me a positive. So that means we have 5 plus 3, which gives me 8. So we have 8 squared. Here we have a negative plus a negative 5. Yep, listen to how I say it. Negative 1 plus negative 5. So they're both negative. This minus sign is acting as a negative for this 5. So that in turn gives us a negative 6. And we're going to square that. So now, doing what's underneath our square root, we have our 8 squared, which gives me 64. And we have our negative 6 squared, which gives me a positive 36. So 64 plus 36, that gives us 100. Okay, yep. And the square root of 100, that's 10. So your answer for this is going to be B, 10. So when they're very blunt and very honest with you, okay, if we're getting things incorrectly here, this did not say negative 1 minus a negative 5, so it can change the sign. No. This is a negative 1 plus a negative 5, so we can get our negative 6. These are the little things, as well as here. When you substitute that negative 3 into the equation, you're only substituting for the x sub 1, not the minus x sub 1, just the x sub 1. So you have to understand the signage. Okay? Yep, I do tutoring for college algebra. Okay. Alright, one last thing. So since we're talking a lot about slope, equation, lines, so we got with their graphing. Now, how do we graph this? So we have our y equals x plus 1. Okay. Alright. So we have two things. Remember, let me bring this down a little bit. This will be our y equals mx plus b. Now, when people say they have trouble with graphing, we're going to keep it simple. You just need two things. You need a y-intercept and you need a slope. My y-intercept is a positive 1. That's where you start. And you always start on the y-axis. So So since it's a positive 1, here I am at the origin, I'm going to put my first point at this 0, 1. So now I need to figure out what my slope is. What is my slope? What's my slope? Okay, what's my slope? What's my gradient? Mel, thank you, Mel. Good morning. Okay. This is Sheldis. Okay, Richard. Okay, it's 1. But remember, slope is your rise over your run. So it is naturally a fraction. So anytime you have a whole number and we need to make it into a fraction without devaluing it, we put it over 1. Okay, good, Kim. So from this point, not from the origin, from your starting point, which is your y-intercept, we're going to rise up 1, and since it's a positive 1, we're going to the right 1 and plot our point. Okay, we can go up 1 to the right 1. Okay. But it's also equivalent if I wanted to go down 1 and to the left 1. Because don't forget, negative 1 over negative 1. And negative divided by a negative is a positive. So now that you have all that, you draw your line. Okay? From left to right, your graph is increasing. As your x's are increasing, so are your y's. Okay? And that's all you have to do. So again, all of these problems you can actually find inside my book called ASVAB Math Practice. So even though you are actually trying to take your test, you need to practice the way that you're going to be assessed. So if we take a look, you have like 3 quizzes in here plus an answer key, okay? And all you have to do is just actually, and here's the page that we actually did. And all you have to do is just sit yourself down, put a timer on, okay? There's roughly 35 questions, or no, some of them have 40 questions, and give yourself a minute per question. So if you have a quiz that's 40 questions, you're going to set a timer for 40 minutes. And you're going to sit and you're going to do all the problems. Okay? If you have one that's for 36, then you're going to sit down for 36 minutes. And you're going to sit and do all the problems in one setting. Because this is a problem. A lot of you guys run out of time when you take standardized tests. Because you think you can spend 5 minutes on one question and be perfectly fine. That's incorrect. Okay? So you can learn, if you want more of the practice of the instructions, if you want to get access to the ASVAB for math practice, you can easily go to the link in my bio. So if you go to the link in my bio, and also you can follow me, you will have access to my stand store. You can get a free checkup here. Let's see if that will show up. Okay, so with the stand store, you can get a free checkup here. Check on your skills. Okay, this is more of like just a sampling. Want anything about one-to-one tutoring? If you need some individual instructions about certain things, about solving equations, about slope, where is it? Anything about slope, graph, and linear equations, you can use volume 4. But if you actually want the book that we're going to practice on, it's right down here. the ASVAB for Math Practice, okay, so you can get the full book. If you want to get the book with video, ASVAB for Math Practice, okay, so you can get the full book. If you want to get the book with video solutions, so basically I walk you through step by step each of the answers of all the questions in this book, you can get the access to that. And these are all ebooks sent directly to your email, and you can get started today. Okay? Yeah. Based off of my score. Yeah, so for the ASVAB, yeah, it's just for militaries. Yep. 1, 2. Yep. Okay. So that's all for today. If you have any questions whatsoever, please do not hesitate to message me. And if anything, tell me what test you're taking and when are you planning on taking it. And if you're not sure what that plan looks like, that's probably the first step that we'll have, that we can have a discussion. All right? So have a great rest of your day, and I will see you guys tomorrow morning. Take care.